Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of our brand new series, Leewayology. Yes. Super excited. Why? Well, because I get to interview the members of my favorite band. I mean, what could be better than that? So, this series is meant to be a deep dive into the players, personalities, histories, and all the particular details of the great band Leeway from New York City. Yes. So welcome everybody. We got a lot to get to tonight, and you may be wondering, well, why is Manny talking about Leeway? Well, it all started 1991. I believe it was August 2nd at the Ritz, New York City, 54th Street, formerly Studio 54. I was given a pair of tickets to a concert, Guar at the Ritz, and my friend was like, "You got to see this band Guar. They're insane. They spray blood at each other. They do all this crazy stuff on stage. Loved it, and you got to check it out." So I was like, "All right." And listen, I wasn't even a fan of that type of music. I was coming from Rush, yes, prog rock, the nerdy stuff. But I decided to head down to the Ritz that night with my friend and to see Guar. And there was this band on the bill opening up called Leeway. Never had heard of them. Never, didn't know what I was in for. So the concert starts, the lights go down, and all of a sudden, the opening refrain of Rise and Fall starts. And all you guys out there who are fans of the band Leeway know that it starts with that bass line, very soft, very subtle, and then all of a sudden, the twin Marshall 800s come in, and my ass was glued, and in fact, that was a crossroads moment in my life. It was before Leeway and after Leeway, but we weren't done. All of a sudden, this huge sound emanates from the stage, massive floor toms, chugging guitars, pounding bass, and then our guest for this evening comes on stage. And again, it was one of these mesmerizing moments. It was actually because my music was like a religion to me. This concert was literally a spiritual revival, a rebirth, and actually a spiritual cleansing in a sense. I had never seen a band as electrifying as Leeway, and it was all being driven by this amazing frontman, Eddie Sutton, perfectly punctuating the music with his almost hip hop influenced vibe. Amazing vocals, super precise, knew exactly when to rile up the crowd. And my life was never the same after that. All of a sudden, I became a massive Leeway fan. And those of you in the audience who are Leeway fanatics, I'm sure you can relate to this. So, our man of the hour, of course, is Eddie Sutton, who will be joining us in a minute. And he's the man who led me on that musical journey. And of course, Leeway had 4 albums from Astoria, New York, Queens, New York, I should say. But basically, one of the most legendary New York City thrash crossover bands that really ever came out of the city. And there hasn't been a band like that since. Eddie Sutton was and is a consummate performer, an absolute pro in front of the crowd. I have never seen to this day a frontman as quite as electrifying as Eddie Sutton from Leeway. And of course, Eddie didn't stop with Leeway. He's had his rise, he's had his falls, and he's had his resurrections. And of course, he's going to be talking about some of that today. And of course, these days, Eddie fronts Leeway NYC, which is, I guess, his tribute to Leeway. He didn't want to use the Leeway name. We'll talk to him about that. But they do play Leeway music, and it captures the vibe just like the old days. So, as I always say in these endeavors, it ain't about me. It's about we. So, may I introduce to you the man who led me on that musical journey that night? A man who really changed my life and he didn't even know it. May I present to you the one, Moet? You're going to want to get ready for this one. The only Eddie Sutton. Yes, yes, yes. The man of the hour. Thank you so much, Eddie, for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. I feel like Eugene Levy from Second City Television. How are ya?
So, Eddie, of course, my first question to you is I was in the audience that night, and I'm not even sure you remember that show, Guar with Leeway with Guar. I believe it was August 2nd, 1991.
I remember it.
And like I said, man, I mean, I didn't mosh. I wasn't a mosher. It just wasn't my thing. I was a musician. I was mesmerized by what was happening on stage. Of course, all I wasn't sure who was driving who. Were you driving the band? Were they driving you? But ultimately, what I want to know right up front is, what did it feel like being up on stage in those days, doing what you did?
It was a high that could never be matched by any drug or any type of imbibed experience. To be able to be on a stage like that and have like hundreds of kids in the room going buck fucking wild was a trip. And, it was a mutual thing that, we fed off that and they fed off us.
It really was that perfect alchemy. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, I remember people at the end of that show leaving Ritz, and everybody, it was so hot in there. People were vomiting.
I bet.
The mosh pit was huge. I remember seeing you guys about a year later at the Marquee, and it was an equally amazing experience. And so, yeah, that feeling on stage must have been amazing.
Yeah, no question. In fact, that show was like Thrasher magazine, the old skate magazine. It was in the top 100 memorable shows for that year. I actually got so mad at our manager, Chris Williamson, who was the promoter of that show. Mm-hmm. And I actually said, "You're fired," that night on stage, and the whole place erupted when I did that.
It's funny, I don't remember that actually happening. But I just remember that feeling of being there. I mean, it really was one of the great moments in musical history, in my opinion. And and I've seen all the great big acts, and like I said, I wasn't even a hardcore or particularly a metal fan.
Yeah.
But you guys definitely changed that, and after that, it was all about thrash and metal. I gotta say, I was never really the biggest hardcore fan. I was actually having a conversation with Mike Gibbons about that, and we're going to talk about that when I have him on next week for episode 2 of Leewayology. But interestingly, he told me, "Yeah, Manny, I came from a prog rock background and so on and so forth. But let's take it back for the audience." So I found this picture online, Eddie, and I found it very endearing. Because, well, that's you as a child.
Yes, it is.
And look at that mischievous look in your face.
It's Ricky Siegel from the Partridge Family.
You did have that hairstyle. Actually, I had the same exact hairstyle too, although I'm about 7 years younger than you. But we're still solidly Gen X, and we remember, of course, these old days. And so tell me what we're seeing in these pictures, and tell the audience, I want to kind of like bring them up to speed a little bit on your childhood, your parents, where you grew up. I kind of want to show the audience Astoria, New York, and maybe go to where the house where you grew up. You'll tell me the address. And so what are we seeing here?
I think this is like Christmas 1973, because I'm looking at the size of my youngest sister Tracy and me and my sister Linda, who's 14 months younger than me. It's got to be that year. We already moved out of Astoria, Queens, and just started living on Long Island at this time.
Oh, really? So you grew up so you were born in Astoria and then moved to Long Island?
Yeah, I was on Long Island till the night John Lennon was literally shot and killed. I moved back to Astoria that same night.
Interesting, because I remember that night very well. Were you affected by that in any way?
It was empowering and shocking. I remember when the news dropped on the air that Lennon was shot, and then they came back within 5 minutes or less and said he was dead. So that was pretty heavy. You know, that's like for the generation or two before me, that's their like, where were you when Kennedy was shot?
Exactly. I mean,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I was only 7 when that happened, but my dad was a huge Beatles fan. We had tons of their records. That's all I listened to. So it was like,
Same.
yeah. So it was a very, I remember just breaking down, listening to Double Fantasy and breaking down at the age of 7.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So I have up here Astoria, New York. Now everybody knows that I love using Google Earth to kind of get people familiar, because, you know, everyone always says, yeah, Leeway's from Queens, Eddie's from Astoria, but very few people out there, unless you're from New York City, kind of know where Astoria is and what kind of a neighborhood is it. So talk to us about, you know, living here, and tell me the address where you grew up and we'll find it.
21st Avenue and 31st Street, 20-24 31st Street.
Right, that's 24 31st Street,
Astoria, Queens.
Or let me just get that. 2024 31st Astoria, 31st Street. Here we go.
Yeah,
all right, so we're going in. We're zooming in now to Eddie's house.
I'm flying.
So it looks like you can't. Is this the same? No, this looks new.
No, they just redid the rooftops, maybe with new lining. And maybe they added an extension. Where your arrow is exactly, that's the courtyard and building. They built another building, I'm noticing now, right next to it.
This one right here.
Yeah, and then next to it is the garage that was always there. Across the street is Con Edison. We used to skateboard here in the early 80s.
No kidding. Right in this area here.
No, back there where these bricks are, this area, yeah.
So this area right here.
Yes, we were on the other side of it. Like, you know, there's these what we'll call the pyramids. They're brick inclines, and they were on both sides of the entrance to Con Edison.
Oh, wait, I think we could actually go down and see these from the street. So right here is where you would skate.
Yeah, I think that's the right side. I can't tell. But if you could go 180 degrees, you should have the same type of brick inclines on the other side. And that's normally where we hung out.
On the other side.
They built something there too.
Yeah, it looks like they built something here. Well, that looks like the garage. Where were they? Over here?
No, diagonally from the garage across the street.
So right around here.
But they looked like that.
Right.
Group of inclines.
So you were a skater. Was that like a big thing in your life?
Oh, especially in the early 80s. I mean, I wasn't good on a half pipe, but I was quite a street skater and loved all that. And that's how I got around. I never got a license or a car. I would either use mass transit and or skate.
So you lived here on this street, in this apartment in Astoria. And let's just
that was my grandma. That was my grandmother's building. Right up the block in the next building was where we had an apartment. The legendary Richie Havens, he and his family were in that same courtyard for a period of time after he was filmed playing Woodstock.
Really?
Yeah.
There's
a picture somewhere of me holding hands with Richie Havens, but I've never been able to find it.
No kidding. Is it a public one or is it a private one in your family?
It's probably private. You know, he was in an interracial marriage. He had mixed kids, you know, the whole nine. Before that was, you know, okay. You know, we're literally talking just a few years after equal rights, you know.
So Astoria is a pretty big community. I'm just looking here. It's kind of like it's bounded up here. It's like kind of like over here, and then it goes down to all the way to the 59th Street Bridge. You know, it's funny because you were telling me off air when we first spoke that you're into true crime, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But while we have this up, I just want to let you know that I was speaking to my friend, another YouTuber called New York City Crime Spot, who does great mafia videos.
Uh-huh.
Um, he has a person who's on his show a lot called Kevin Marr. He was an FBI informant, but he worked for the mob. He was like
I saw that.
yeah, he dumped a car right here into the East River that
Well,
was
apparently he dumped quite a few, and there were
yeah,
cars that Roy DeMeo
you
gave
know
him.
you know the story.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
on it. I'm on it.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about possibly getting a drone under there and trying to find the car. He said it was a Lincoln. It was a Lincoln, and I'll never forget where it landed. He said it landed right here. And
Fascinating.
yeah, it is, but the legalities of that are just insane. Getting a drone into the East River, even if you could do it, it would probably get like chopped up by the currents and
Well, if
everything.
you go down further, like where the Triborough Bridge is, where my neighborhood was, you have the RFK, Robert Kennedy, used to be the Triborough.
Right.
And then the bridge next to it is a railroad track. It's called the Hell's Gate Bridge.
Uh-huh.
There's stories of like a Spanish armada sinking over there. The whirlpools and the currents are treacherous. And they say there's buried treasure under there. That's the story.
A friend of mine was actually in the late 90s was part of a crew that was gonna go down and look for it, but it never happened. He was gonna film it and everything.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. But it might be very dangerous with the currents and
I wouldn't mess with the East River. I mean, that's why they put Rikers Island in the middle of it, like, right, I guess this is Rikers right here?
well, Astoria Park, right by the Hell Gate, on the other side is Randall's Island. And in the book, The Westies, they talk about somebody working in that sewage facility
Mhm.
and making bodies disappear. Whenever they dumped a body in there, for like example, the torso of Ruby Stein, who was a major loan shark that the Westies killed.
Right, the Westies. Didn't they keep his head in the refrigerator?
That was somebody else.
Somebody else.
But that torso, because they didn't, gut it, we'll say, it wound up bobbing all the way out to the ocean and then came off the shore, like, I don't know if it's Coney Island or some way over there where the southern coast of the country is, and the
Right.
Atlantic.
Wow, that's insane. So I found these great pictures of old Astoria on a Facebook page, and I pulled some of the
That's
nice.
Broadway. Now that's where Jimmy from Murphy's Law grew up, and Dougie from the band Kraut. Not far from the train station there, the consigliere of the Gambino family before Gotti, Joe Gallo, he ran a candy store over there.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was in like semi-retirement, even though he would still counsel a lot of the made guys within that family.
Uh-huh. And look at this one. This is probably what, 76 or 77, judging from the cars.
Yeah, I wish I could see the street sign, but I think that's Steinway.
Well, it says Steinway Coffee Shop. Did you ever
Yeah.
remember any of these places?
I don't know if you go the other side, this might be where the movie theater was.
I think so. I can't go on the other side because it's just a photograph.
Gotcha.
But it looks like an area where a
Yeah, it's
movie theater
probably
would be.
Steinway and 30th Avenue.
So what was Astoria like growing up?
When I was there until about, I guess, 1990, there were more Greek immigrants and Greek
Right.
Americans in our neighborhood than there were in Athens, Greece, the
Yeah.
capital of Greece.
Astoria is known as
That's Broadway and 31st Street right there.
I remember the old Optimo stores. We had one on 231st and Broadway in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And these were ubiquitous all over New York City in those days.
Yeah, they were normally like, European owned, but like again, turning into the 90s and the new millennium, a lot of Pakistani and Indian people bought up those businesses.
Uh-huh. I was just I was just in Astoria the other day on Hoyt Avenue South doing a gardening gig.
There you go.
And I want to talk to you about gardening too, but what am I seeing here? What's this?
This looks like a local parade. I can't really tell. Again, I wish I could see the signs
It's
because
hard to, yeah, it's hard to see them.
this looks like, the early 70s, and a lot of that is kind of lost to my memory. You know what I mean? Like you kind of remember moments and parts of your life, but you could see by the cars the way they're so boxed
Right.
and huge. All these cars were made out of steel. They
That
were
is,
like rolling tanks.
my
You know
dad
what I
had one
mean?
of these, a Buick Skylark. My dad had one of these in two-door, but here's 31st Avenue.
Yeah,
Good.
this is the area that the movie A Bronx Tale was filmed.
Really? They didn't even film it in the Bronx, huh?
No, it was made in Astoria, just a couple of avenues away from Kaufman Studios.
On the actual streets of Astoria itself?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Because that was a great movie.
Yeah.
I remember going to see that in the theater. So these coffee shops, these luncheonettes used to be a huge part of New York City, as I'm sure you remember.
Yes, yes.
So what? And of course, this is the diner that's still there to this day, right by the entrance of the this is the road right here that goes to the Triborough Bridge. I'm not quite
Yeah,
sure.
that's probably the old Neptune, but they've redone it over the years.
Yeah, they have.
I'm sure that Neptune is still there.
No, I was just driving it the other day, and I saw it. So did you have a mother and a father, or were you single mother? Like, what was it like? What was your household?
No, I had parents up until I'd say about 8 was when my dad and my mom separated. And it was quite a challenge for my mom, but she's my fucking hero for how she kept us together and did everything she could. And even though we spent some time on Long Island and moved back in 80, a lot of it was because me and my sister Linda were coming of age.
Mm-hmm.
And she was pursuing more gainful employment so we could move further up the road.
Your mother you were talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
My dad, after he separated from the family, after a few years, he kind of disappeared for a while. But my dad was a bit of a wise guy. He was what you would consider a cowboy because he was too wild for the mob. By 1973, my dad had a full beard, the long hair, and he was fully tattooed and sleeved. And in 1973, it was illegal to run a tattoo parlor. It was all underground.
Wow, really?
Yeah, yeah.
So wait, so what did your dad do?
My dad was a film editor for WOR TV, but at night he owned a tow truck and auto collision company not far from Broadway and 31st Street, which you showed before.
Right.
And he helped, make what is known the modern day chop shop back in the day.
Interesting. I know my friend New York City Crime Spot's going to want to interview you about this, but was he affiliated with the mob?
I don't know who he was affiliated with. My dad on the street was known as Eddie the Beard. So I really don't know much about him, other than some stories which I'm not always comfortable with talking about. But he definitely was part of building what has become known as in today's world the chop shop.
Right.
Right there, the 114 precinct is from the period of the late 60s until I guess about 1995. The 114 was like the #1 precinct in auto theft. So it gives you an idea and a perspective of like what was going on in regards to that world.
Right, absolutely. I mean, and then Queens was where everybody, all the Queens in Brooklyn was where basically most of the mobsters lived. And of course, I spent a lot of time in Queens the last 2 years doing the Son of Sam work, looking into that kind of stuff.
Well, Whitey Ford came from Astoria too, the famous Hall of Fame from the Yankees. The high school I finished at, W.C. Bryant, Ethel Merman came from that high school.
Right. And was Astoria, I wonder how Astoria was named. Was it after this guy, John Jacob Astor? Do you know
I
do you
don't
know
know if
about
it
that?
was Astor, but before a lot of the tenement and apartment buildings, Steinway is named after Steinway pianos. And
Right.
and at the far end of Steinway, um, like almost closest to where the bridge of Rikers Island is, that's where the factory is still today.
So just looking at this picture again, I want to just go back to this picture of you,
Put my goggles on.
because it's so, I don't know, this face of yours just tells so much about your like seemingly about your personality. I mean, I don't really know you much yet, but it looks
I-
like you were kind of like a wild, mischievous kid who liked adventure. Is that a good
It's
way
fair to say, but we're children at Christmas. You know what I mean? It's like,
to
presents are on the way.
Yeah,
Santa is coming. You know what I mean? I probably still believed in Santa Claus at that time.
that's true. And so these are your two sisters.
Yes, the one in the middle is Linda, and the
Uh-huh.
youngest is Tracy.
Are your parents still alive?
My mom is.
Your mom is.
Yeah.
Did you retain a relationship with your father after, the divorce?
My sisters did. Sadly, I missed the chance of having closure with him.
Oh, that's I'm sorry to hear that.
It is what it is, man. What can you do?
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
So, music. Obviously, you're an extremely musical person, very talented. I wanna find out why you, became a singer rather than an instrumentalist, but before we get to that, what was your first musical memory? I know you must have a moment in time in your life when you yourself were influenced by the sound of music.
My mom was very much into R&B and show tunes, like particularly Barbara Streisand, stuff like that.
Wow, okay.
And my dad was very much into hard rock. So I was around all of that very early on. My mom went to school with Christopher Walken, who was from Astoria too.
Uh-huh.
And, his family owned the bakery off Broadway, Walken's Bakery. And, my grandfather, my mom's dad, didn't want her to get involved in entertainment. And
Mhm.
he was a very stern man. After World War II and the Korean War, he was a limo driver and used to drive like the Rat Pack guys
Oh, no
around.
kidding.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he was just very down about the music industry and entertainment. So he
He
kind of pushed her
probably
away from that.
I mean, he probably saw some things as a limo driver, that gave him good reason to not want his daughter to get involved with,
Well, like at that time, you had the Partridge Family, right?
uh-huh.
And David Cassidy was a big teeny bop star. And my grandfather took pride in talking about how he told him to put his joint out in his limo.
That's funny.
Put that shit out. You're not smoking that in here.
So everybody, just real quick, Eddie, of course, and we'll talk about this a little later. Eddie, I guess the term is you're still battling cancer, right? I just want to
Yeah.
let everyone know that that Eddie has a GoFundMe, and Ruby is putting the link in the chat every few minutes for everybody. Just in case you want to, go to Eddie's GoFundMe and donate some money for his medical issues, which I'm sure are medical expenses, which I'm sure are not cheap.
No, it's not easy. Bills are piling up. My insurance doesn't really always cover everything.
Right.
I've been in chemo now over 2 years.
Wow. So I want to talk about that a little later, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
get that up now, just so people know that in case you can, please donate to Eddie's GoFundMe. It's in the description of the video, and Ruby in the chat will be putting up the link every couple minutes for people to see it.
I
So
appreciate that.
no problem at all. So I distinctly remember my first musical memory was at 3 years old, and it was "Fly Like an Eagle" by Steve Miller Band. So it's funny because you grew up with R&B, and that got into your soul, huh?
My first album was actually Jackson 5, ABC.
So you were kind of not I don't know if the right word is weaned, but you were heavily influenced as a youngster with those first musical imprints with black music and R&B.
That, as well as, like regular top 40 radio too.
Right.
This was just before FM.
Uh-huh.
So you had a lot of like WABC, which was 77 on the dial. It's all talk radio now. But like FM radio didn't really start until about, I'd say, 74.
Mm-hmm.
And then by 1975, I was listening to like WBLS when it was strictly a black format radio.
Right, and it's so obvious in your swagger on stage and the way that you deliver your words. Even the first time I saw you, I had no idea who you were, but I remember it was very hip hop influenced in the sense that you just moved like a rapper and you punctuated moments like an R&B, like almost like a hard like a metal. Why is his name escaping me? Living in America, I feel good.
Oh, James Brown.
James Brown. Yeah, you were like a metal James Brown. And
I didn't get dusted as much as James Brown did, but I guess I feel good.
That was great. So all right. So these songs infusing into you, did that like influence you at all? Like, I want to be a musician, or how did that come about? Like the feeling of wanting to do this?
No question. When I had that Jackson 5 album, I already wanted to sing to the music and act it out, the same way you see kids today looking adorable, being just children or even toddlers, vibing to music. You know what I mean?
Right,
and
right.
I couldn't help wanting to gravitate towards that. And hardcore music that was evolving in 1981 in New York City for me, it was such a do-it-yourself, just get up there and go for it type of energy and vibe. It inspired me to just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. But hardcore was also to me a lesson in being an individual and having your own style.
Right.
And that was very important to me. Of course, I was listening to early rap before they called it rap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that as a street sound, energy, and phenomena, just like this hardcore scene that I started staying out late or all night to be a part of on the Lower East Side, or even on the West Side where Rock Hotel Jane Street used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It was inviting to be involved. I remember one of my first jobs as a messenger in Manhattan. I ran into Rod Stewart and, walked up to him, said hello, and asked him for an autograph. And he just kind of paused me like a fly or something,
Really?
like a get away, kid, you're bothering me.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So that must have actually been very, I mean, you remember that to this day. So that must have actually been quite an experience.
Yeah. And, the Bad Brains were like the Beatles to this music. And the way they would just roll up in front of his show and just be like, yo, what's up? And just hang out and talk to people. You know, here were my new rock star idols.
Right.
And they were personable. They were in reach. You could reach out and touch them. You know what I mean? Like that's very, very powerful.
Right.
When you're still in your developed youth. You know
But how did you end up downtown going to these hardcore and punk shows in the first place? Because if you're coming up in Astoria listening to R&B, the Jackson 5, Top 40 radio, your father's playing some rock songs.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to rock too. I mean, you know, Led Zeppelin in school in 75, 76.
But how do you end up downtown in the scene that you ended up in, which was, I guess, the hardcore scene?
It was basically the guys from Token Entry, but before they were called Token Entry, they went by the name Gilligan's Revenge. And I met them, and from there they introduced me to Kraut, and it may sound like they're a racist band. They were anti-fascists.
Right.
And, you know, again, you know, here's neighborhood kids doing something. Kraut was like one of the first New York hardcore bands, even though they sounded more punk than what is known out of New York hardcore with the crossover and the beatdown. You know, they were the first band out of all of them to put an album out, you know, and, you know, again, you know, this is inviting and pulling me in, wanting to be a part of this and giving me an opportunity to, you know, try this out.
So how did you end up in your first band? And then let's take us to the evolution of the first iteration of Leeway.
A lot of people don't know this, but before Leeway, I was kind of working it in a local bar around the corner from my house, doing Grandmaster Flash covers. So, you know, for free drinks and to get to hang out underage at night, you know, I would do a couple of songs. And
now, wait, hold on. Was this a black bar? Was this because you're doing Grandmaster Flash?
It was a bar with a DJ who played dance music as well as hard rock. You know, it was that type of neighborhood where, you know, people were into kind of the both. You know, in 1980, you know, around that time, it was classic rock, you know, like The Who, and Zeppelin, people with painted denim jackets and that shit. You know what I mean? And at the same time, you know, rap was a novelty styled music. And so, you know, I kind of went with it, you know, for the hell of it, you know.
Yo, not for nothing, but to this day, I can still recite almost every lyric of Rapper's Delight, and not the short version. I'm talking about the long version that was on the B-side.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's interesting the parallels between your musical development and mine. Of course, you ended up playing in a legendary band, and I didn't, but still, it's interesting. So your first. What led you then to try to start forming your bands, and then take us to the first iteration of Leeway?
Well, it was me and AJ meeting each other at shows. You know,
okay.
It's like, oh, you're from Astoria too? Ba, 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 ba.
How far did he live from you, and did you know him by sight?
He was like on another side of Astoria. He was down by the Astoria Park area, you know, a little on the other side of the Triborough, RFK, let's say. And another kid I knew, Jose, who was our first bass player, I knew him from shows. AJ had a friend named Sasso, George Matroni. They all were going to school together in Astoria at a spot called St. John's. And you know, they formed the band, and then I jumped in on vocals, you know.
Now, why now? So vocals, did you ever consider playing an instrument, or was vocals just always your thing?
It was just, I guess running my mouth was my gift.
Well, your bass player is playing a Rickenbacker bass, man. That's a pretty impressive bass.
Yeah, he had decent equipment.
And then here you are. Now, you were not yet known as Eddie Sutton. So this is
My
your
real last name, yes.
so now this is Italian. Are you full Italian, or are you like one of these New York mutts like I am?
Well, as far as my genealogy, I'm mainly Italian, but I also have Puerto Rican blood.
Oh,
And
so that's
my
me.
mom's side is Spanish, German, and Irish.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm half Jewish, half Puerto Rican. I've been hearing Juan Epstein my entire life, man.
Well, you kind of got that name, Manny Grossman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, believe me, it's been more a curse than a blessing for sure.
Yeah,
So,
I know a lot of Jewish Boricua types, so that's another part of this melting pot that is New York City.
yeah, exactly. When my parents met in the city here, my mom was from Puerto Rico, my dad was from Pittsburgh. So
Yeah.
so drums, you have Sasso Matroni,
Sasso,
who we never hear from again after this demo, but here, and then Jose Ochoa, kind of the same thing.
yeah,
So you and AJ though were kind of like the core of this. I would that be a fair statement?
more or less. But you know what? Jose actually wrote the lyrics to 2 songs, On the Outside and Catholic Schoolgirls, or Catholic High
Oh,
School.
interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Because yeah, we're gonna play a few.
They were going to Catholic High School at the time.
I was actually gonna ask that question about how that song came to pass. And in
Well,
fact,
the title is from the Kentucky Fried Movie.
correct, Kentucky Fried Movie, which is actually one of my favorite movies of all time.
So the tongue-in-cheek sarcasm of that title with the conformities and the cliquey nonsense that goes on in high school.
So while we're talking about that movie, let's just cue it up and let everyone hear a little excerpt of Catholic High School Girls in Trouble, which actually I remembered distinctly from that Leeway with Guar show, because I was like, yo, what the? Now all of a sudden these guys are doing like metal rap. What is this? This is crazy. And then so let's let the audience hear a little excerpt
All right.
of Catholic High School Girls. So yeah, so early metal rap. I mean, this was like way ahead of its time.
Well, this was written and first recorded in 84, 85. But then we recorded it for Born to Expire, the album, in November of 87. But this was written in the mid-80s, you know what I mean? As Run DMC was starting to blow up on the airwaves and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah,
Right before Raising Hell and My Adidas.
I know every word of that album
And
still to this day.
It's trippy because we wound up signing to the same record label that Run DMC built and made, you know, even though it was under the semi-brand of Rock Hotel Records. It was Profile Records, the house that Run DMC built.
Right. Did you ever meet them?
I did, yeah. And you know, I would run into Daryl Mack later on in the years. Daryl Mack's a very big metalhead, so it just goes to show you that there was even people from Hollis, Queens, that were part of this rap to hip hop phenomena.
Right.
And they were into the same mix-up of sounds and music, you know.
Well, you hear it all over their early music. Rockbox, King of Rock, right? Exactly. And
all of it, yeah. I mean, like, you know, you just get to see how much of a melting pot, you know, this whole city was at that time.
So Jose Ochoa then is your original bassist, writes the lyrics to Catholic High School Girls in Trouble, which is really one of the seminal songs in rap metal, because it's one of the earliest. And now you're telling us it was written in '84, which is insane.
Yeah.
So then what happens with the band? What happens with Sasso and what happens with Jose?
Sasso was into bodybuilding, and he started having like issues trying to do the thrash, because I guess he was bulking up so much that he was having a hard time maintaining the beat and banging out.
Sasso, right? The
Yeah.
speed, maybe the
Yeah.
speed as well.
And Jose, and I regret it, but we were looking for better musicians after we got Mackie Jason to play with us for a while.
The legendary, right?
We realized like we need a phenomenal rhythm section to go to the next level. Otherwise, we're just going to be another band out of this new thing. If we want to take it further, we've got to step up.
Well, that was immediately apparent to me, because remember, I didn't even like hardcore. I wasn't my best friend was a skater. He went to every CB's matinee every week. He was into Reagan Youth, Agnostic Front, Gorilla Biscuits, all these bands, and he would play me the records, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, all right, But I'm here into Rush. I'm into Yes, Then I was a nerd.
Well, a lot of the guys really couldn't sing, and even in the first couple of records, I really didn't find my true vocal style and my capabilities early on, but at least it stood out for the time and moment that we did it. You mentioned Reagan Youth. Dave Insurgent was one of the most charismatic guys in those early hardcore shows. I'm talking about 1983. Sadly, Dave committed suicide. His girlfriend was the victim of Joel Rifkin.
Oh my God.
And quite possibly the bass player after Jose, Zowie, I don't know if they ever found it to be true, but there's a chance she may have been a victim too.
Of Zowie's girlfriend?
Yeah.
So oh my God, I'm speechless on that. But so just getting back to what the original.
Yeah, let's move on. Move on. I'm not trying to be disparaging or hurtful.
Of course, but it was immediately apparent to me when I saw you guys on that stage that you were taking this to a different level. That this was high quality stuff. You guys were miles beyond a lot of these bands I was hearing. The songs were, first of all, the musicianship was on point. There was no mistakes made. Even if there were, I couldn't tell. The precision, the power, the tightness, the song structures, the melodies. It was.
We worked hard at it, man.
Yeah,
we were rehearsing, 3 times a week.
So, but you were saying though how you felt bad. You had to get rid of the I think you said it was Sasso.
No, Sasso stepped off on his own.
Oh no, Jose. Yeah, right.
I had to tell Jose, and it was a heartbreaking moment. But it's
you
like,
had to do it for your band. I mean,
we moved forward, and this is what we decided to do. You know what I mean? And it is what it is.
So then this is the lineup that's on the album. And now here's AJ.
Yeah.
And of course, this is you with your cigarette right by a gas tank, which I always loved.
Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
And what's crazy is I was never able to figure out who these guys were.
Well, I'll tell you if you want.
Yeah, of course.
Right there, right behind me is Tony.
That's
Tony Fontau.
Okay.
Brazilian guy that, in his broken English, wanted to be John Bonham, and he got to be John Bonham with us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously, we took him on after Mackie already showed us what we needed as a drummer, and we were lucky to get him and to record our first record together.
Tony's going to be on my show in 2 weeks. And
No shit.
yeah, and I'm extremely excited to get him on because, well, I'm a drummer first of all, even though
Okay.
I'm a drummer turned bassist.
Well, good. You know, like he walked away. I think he felt like there was no money in it, or what it was, and he got discouraged. And you know, the rest of us were like, okay, we moved on.
Right.
Now, the next guy is same thing. Zowie, wonderful dude.
This is Zowie.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this is Zowie. This is the bass player.
Zowie Ackerman or Howard Ackerman. But
wait a second. Does he play now? Does he have a is he the guy who owns Death by Audio?
Not that I know of. He used to, after he left us, he joined Circus of Power.
Okay.
And, you know, that was another guy who saw the writing on the wall. You know, he was offered, you know, a salary with Circus of Power. They were signed to a major label. He was a little bit older than us. So he made his move. He moved on too. You know what I mean? And then, of course, there's Mike Gibbons. Mikey wrote some of the most incredible leads that have ever been heard out of a so-called New York hardcore band.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact,
in my opinion, at his age, he was the Randy Rhoads of New York hardcore.
I agree with you 1000%, Eddie. And he's going to be on. Mikey's going to be on next week. We're very excited.
Good. I'm sure he's excited too.
Yeah, and he's a fellow Rush fan, so we're gonna get into that kind of stuff. But you know, this was obviously a classic lineup. The double bass work of Tony Fontau was way ahead of its time.
And you know, the guy that would do the centerfolds for High Times magazine was the one who did this photo shoot for the back cover of Born to Expire.
Well, I want to play the audience. I want to play the audience some excerpts from Born to Expire because when was this actually recorded? This album?
It was recorded in November 1987.
87.
It did not get released until January 89 because after Zowie left the band, he was on tour with Circus of Power for a long time, almost a full year. And Profile did not want to release the record until he signed away, and, you know, in the protection of he might, you know, sue Profile, something ridiculous like that. So, you know, Profile was crafty, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a show in and of itself. But
well, Run DMC always tried to get away from Profile. They had the best lawyers. The contracts were the truest definition of capitalism and exploitation, that, you know, they were just covering their asses.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And talk about bad luck, because a year in the music business might as well be a lifetime.
It could be for many, yeah.
Right. So anyway, here is for the audiences, for people who don't know the power and the amazing energy that is Leeway, of especially of the Born to Expire era. Here is one of their seminal songs, excerpts of that, Mark of the Squeal. So that double bass, talk to me about that double bass. Nobody was doing that except for Dave Lombardo from Slayer at the time. Nobody was playing that fast.
Pretty much.
I mean, no other, I could confide no other band, especially in New York City, who was doing anything like that. That was insane.
I don't know. By the time we got to record, and it would be later before the album got released, you know, Anthrax was already checking out shows, and Metallica came to a matinee, and a lot of people were trying to add metal sounding elements because, let's be real, in the metal genre, musicianship was light years ahead of a bunch of kids that were just practicing and learning their craft.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
And this next excerpt I wanted to play to the audience because it's a classic example, and we're going to hear a few more as we go along.
Okay.
But it's a classic example of what I call the breakdown, and you might have a different term for it. But let's listen to it, where the song changes kind of tempo and everybody starts going effing crazy. So here we go, guys. First of all, I love how you raised the guitars right at that moment in the mix. That was like a brilliant idea. But
oh yeah, it was all my idea.
So talk to me about like that whole thing of like switching it up in the middle of the song, and what that did to not only musically but what that did to a crowd.
Well, that's, I guess, me and AJ with really trying to learn our positions, and thankfully I had great guys behind me that knew what they were doing, and we gelled. I can't sit here and pontificate like for example, anybody from back then, 35 years ago, if they were to say today that they knew we would be in this world and we'd be recognized as, a musical phenomena, I mean, New York hardcore as a whole, they would be lying, because I think all of us were running by the minute, going by the seat of our pants, and really just trying to do our own thing. Mm-hmm. Whether you were harder than the other band or they were harder than you, I guess that's the competition that goes on between bands and stuff. But, again, I don't know, like, confidence and everything else was there, but the expectations of where it was going to go and everything else, like, who knew? Who
right.
really knew?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we're recognized for our position at the table and our place at the table, but we didn't have the touring success or the right management or the right labels behind us to achieve what we were shooting for. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm just glad that, our music withstood the test of time. This recording, this album in itself was done in Normandy studios, and every band and their mother wanted to go up there and capture the same sound.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I wanted to talk about Normandy sound. And first of all, how'd you guys end up there in the first place?
Chris Williamson, I don't know how he figured it out, but this was a studio up in Rhode Island that, like New Kids on the Block and New Edition went to, or Jake Giles band, people like that.
Right.
We were the first like New York band to go up there. And I'm sure it was a bit eye-opening for them. You know what I mean? At least I was able to carry a tune. Tom Suarez didn't really like a lot of New York music because the vocals just didn't have anything to them. It was just, for the sake of growling and being hard, not really trying to carry a tune or anything like that.
Well, your voice was very distinct, and actually, you were born with a very gifted timbre. You are a higher pitched singer, so you can cut through like a knife.
Well, I guess because I tried to sing for a long time, and I noticed other vocalists didn't pronunciate well, and you couldn't really hear the lyrics being expressed and emoted.
Right.
And I was born partially deaf.
Really?
Yeah. I have less than half my hearing in my left ear, and from there, all those things I've tried to focus on, so you understood what I was saying. You could hear it word for word.
But the Normandy sound that you guys got, that sound of that studio, and of course it became even clearer and punchier on the second album, Desperate Measures. But so you're saying that after people heard that, everybody went up to Normandy and wanted to cop that sound?
Yeah.
I don't blame them. I mean, the guitar, I mean, the drums on the first album, I think could have been mixed a little bit higher. That's just me personally, but the guitars, unreal. The
I think it's
sound.
funny for a lot of people when they put that record on the first time, you hear the bass very low because the bass is buried on the first record.
Yeah.
So like you hear it and you want to turn it up, you turn it up,
And then
get
all of
it,
a sudden,
and then all of a sudden it goes.
yeah, and
And
of course that was the
you probably blew out your parents' speakers and got in trouble the next day.
so here's another excerpt that I want to play, and then Eddie, you and I will take like a 5-minute break just
Okay.
and just everybody in the audience, we're just gonna go off air for 5 minutes. Just keep on watching, and we'll be coming back in 5 minutes. But this is another great example of a classic from the first album.
What you could do too is after you do this is you could put some music on while we take 5, so there's not dead air. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I'll put on I'm Your Pusher, a video or something. Or
Sounds good to me.
We'll figure something out. But the next song, of course, Unexpected, it mixes so many styles. I mean, not so many styles, but you got that speed metal going on. You have the hardcore the hardcore drum beat, and it's just an amazing mix.
It
of
opens
styles.
with that epic rock sound.
Let's have the
and
audience.
then it knocks you off your ass.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you guys did best. And so let's play for the audience, Unexpected. So yeah, I mean, that intro is epic. And then of course I want to and then we get to that speed, and then the brilliance of AJ and Mikey together.
Yeah, then it turns into like death metal.
Yeah, let's listen.
Dredge.
Let's listen just to another one of these, what I call breakdowns at the end, and then we'll take a little break.
Go ahead, knock your socks off. It's funny with the new version, with the tribute that I do to the band nowadays performing, we only use that part of the song. We don't play the whole song. I mean, it's my favorite part of the song. So we do that to kind of close like our outro to the set.
Well, it's a great outro, and you guys do that twice in that song, and just the crunch of those guitars. I can't wait to speak to Mikey next week because I want to talk to him about,
Yeah, he'll be able to give you the whole technical breakdown. I could give you like how it feels and what it does to you, but he'll be the technical advisor of this Leewayology you got going.
All right, so everybody, Eddie and I are going to take a 5-minute break. We will be back in 5 minutes, and in the meantime, we will leave you with Leeway NYC, Message to a Man-Child.
You bring the beat one more time. I sacrificed everything. my doorstep, knock at this doorstep. You bring the beat one more time. I sacrificed everything just for the dawn. This shit's too foul to mention, but you have my attention. You're just a fucked up clown. Don't bitch, don't come around. You couldn't respect wishes. You bring this jackpot in, just like a fucked up feeling. Right to my doorstep, knock at this doorstep. One more time.
All right. Excuse me. All right, everyone. That's okay. Eddie, you good?
I might,
All right.
I might sound a little breathless for a minute there, but I'm okay.
All right, cool. So everybody, that was Leeway NYC, which is talk to us about Leeway NYC and what that's all about.
Well, again, the band or the tribute band that I have now really consists of me. But, I became Eddie Leeway. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So being the front man of this band, I'm the go-to guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, music was really like the one thing year after year that I really got right in life. And it's important to me. And it's my one way of being able to still have a little bit of relevance where today's fan base is younger than the songs. I mean, that's phenomenal.
That's insane, man.
And I may not be playing to the crowds that I used to play with when we were together, except for when I do fests, and I don't get that opportunity too much, especially now. But I wanted to show people that it didn't matter if I had reputable musicianship behind me. I could still write and create and still bottle lightning, if you will. You know what I mean?
So I do want to play actually just the beginning of Pusher, which is a Leeway NYC song, because this song really does kind of harken back in a sense to the original ethos of Leeway, the original sound of the breakdown and the different intro, and then it kind of goes into a different rhythm.
And I did that with the very first lead guitarist of Leeway, Gordon Ansys, as well as Dank on bass, who plays in Whiplash. He's somebody I had a friendship from all the way back in the mid-'80s, like Dan Nastasi, who was literally a kid when he started Mucky Pup, and then eventually played with everybody else.
Right.
And now, and he has a new band called Kings Never Die. He raised a family. He was a coach in New Jersey high school football, coached a championship with his sons. His sons are now grown, and after college, the whole nine. And it was a fun time. This
Right.
is when I was based out of Hoboken,
Uh-huh.
before the studio explosion and everything.
So let's listen to a little bit of Leeway Pusher. I really like the beginning of this one.
Johnny feet in my shoes, all I needed. Everybody's a goddamn critic.
That's very true. Hold on one second. Let me just give me 1 second here.
Yeah, do your thing, man.
Yeah, everyone is a goddamn critic. So true. So that's a great sound. So were these guys like big fans of the band like I was, or did you just find these guys random? Like what was
No,
the
like
deal
I
with putting-
said, Dank on bass, he was playing with Whiplash, still is to this day.
Mhm.
Danny came back to music after a lot of success in the 80s and 90s. And,
I remember Mucky Pup opened up for you guys.
Yeah, what it would be like. And, they opened us up in the States. But after Dan left the band, we would open them up in Europe.
Right. And then somehow or other, Mucky Pup kind of like morphed into Dog Eat Dog. Is that how that did that?
Dan left and started Dog Eat Dog with like Brian Fitzpatrick,
Right. And the
John
singer,
O'Connor.
and I remember distinctly hearing that first Dog Eat Dog demo tape and being like, yo, these guys are copying Eddie Sutton. These guys, the singer sounded exactly like you.
I wasn't in a good frame of mind with that. And a lot of people were trying to instigate a bigger beef than what it was. But, John's a very good friend of mine and has been for most of the last decade and stuff. And, I've had fun with them,
So we
and
had
it goes with my project, Truth and Rights, that I did almost 10 years ago that but we never really got to put the CD out properly. It was basically done on the underground tip, even though the single was released by 6 Feet Under. But, a lot of people don't know about Truth and Rights, that we did an EP and we did a full-length CD. People need to check that out. Truth and Rights, the title of the CD is called Lies and Slights. You can find it on YouTube, and we're looking to reissue that on Upstate Records.
Cool. So moving right along, of course, I just wanted to get to one question that Ray J had. He's a longtime viewer of mine. So what's the story behind the Da Vinci-like logo?
This was a lot my idea. At first, we didn't know what to name the band. There were really only 2 choices on the table. It was either Leeway or Juggernaut. And I thought Leeway, kind of the definition of the word, defined what, hardcore kids were trying to do, even though it has like that kind of pussy rock type and sound to it, like Fastway or something. But the Da Vinci thing, that's what I thought of for the whole concept of Born to Expire, is taking Vitruvian Man, the sketch from Leonardo da Vinci, but looking at him in a decade, or looking inside the man, because obviously he's got no skin. You see muscle definition only and skull face,
Right.
and it worked.
It definitely did. Who drew that?
His name is Bevan Stone. He's a bit of a recluse. I spoke to him several years ago, after not seeing him since the late 80s, early 90s. He lives a very quiet life, doesn't really do much in art. from what I understand nowadays. But he's out there somewhere, and Bevan is tied to our original notoriety and everything. You know, he helped really push the band because that was a great cover.
It's an amazing cover. So all right. So I want to kind of go down to a little bit more of the history. So this is the lineup that recorded Born to Expire. Now, this of course was not the lineup that I saw. I believe that this was the lineup that I saw opening up for Guar that day, where you got a different bass player here and a different drummer. And I remember seeing Pokey Mo, your drummer, and just being, because I was a drummer for so long.
Sure.
I was just so blown away by this guy.
Yeah, he came right in and he fit after Tony. You know, he might not be built like Tony, but he was able to kill it. You know what I mean? So we didn't miss a step.
Well, it's funny.
Original rhythm section.
Right. I mean, you guys are kind of like the Yes of New York metal and thrash and hardcore, because you guys could change lineups all the time, or at least change lineups a few times, and yet still retain that sound that people love.
This photo is when we were on tour in 1989 with the Bad Brains for their Quickness tour.
Was this in California?
Yeah, you can't tell from my photo, but I was pretty hungover that morning when we took this photo.
I'm just digging the shorts, man.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. You know, I've heard people comment, well, you know, they look like Anthrax. You know, and I don't think people realize that. You know, we were on the cusp of doing our own thing. It was just bands like that got released quicker than we did, so we missed kind of like the claim of fame on the timeline of history, because we didn't have a record deal. We didn't have promotion. You know what I mean? But we were a big part of that crossover sound that came out of New York that most people know of today. Like we were the precursors of beatdown hardcore and everything else. You know, absolutely. We were the ones that were kind of like the template, and then people carried it on, you know, over time.
Exactly. And a highly influential band. And I bet you a lot of people, you know, bid off you guys and didn't even give you credit for it.
Well, this also, like, you see how we're all wearing band shirts and stuff. I remember 10 years later from this, when every metal magazines was still in existence and stuff, it's like, you know, every band had to have their favorite band, or a band or a band that they jock and wear the shirt like, hi, my name's so and so and I'm a big fan of this one, you know.
So now talk to me about Jimmy Xanthos, because again, another one of these people who were in the band and who
he was an Astoria dude, you know, like a lot of Greek guys in Astoria in the late 80s. They were into like Dio. We listened to Dio, you know. But, you know, Jimmy was American, even though he came from a Greek background. He didn't have the accent or anything like that. But, you know, Jimmy fell in, you know, and, you know, AJ kind of gave him a bit of an idea where to go, or even what to play, and he played it well.
Right. And of course, this is the lineup that recorded the classic second LP, Desperate Measures, which took the sounds of your first album and just put them into not only overdrive, but made it, but it was more, it was deeper. The songs were more melodic, even more structured, more layers, more depth to them, lyrically as well, and musically. And we're going to get into a few of those excerpts here, but this is a seminal album that everybody who's into metal or thrash or just music in general should listen to. And so, of course, Desperate Measures, you guys went back up to Normandy sound, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, obviously I was still expanding and learning as a vocalist, you know what I mean? And, you know, that's the one thing too, like people were impressed by our first album. The second album had even more progression, and, you know, the hard practice and work that we put into it, it evolved more and more album after album. Even though Adult Crash is kind of like the weakest, the third out of the four, But by Open Mouth Kiss, what we were trying to create, we had on the money too, and it was down to one guitar by then.
Right, exactly. And I do
Well, the
want to
last two albums were
we're
one
down to
guitar.
one guitar, and I do actually want to explore that a little bit more. I want to see if anything was gained or if anything was lost in your opinion by that. But before we get into that, I do want to just ask, so who was doing the bulk of the writing of all this music?
Well, I had to write what I was going to preach about. You know what I mean? And so lyrics, the vocal hooks in the chorus, and everything else was mine. You know, like I mentioned, Jose contributed to the lyrics of the first couple of songs on Born to Expire, but it was my arrangement. I'm one of the only guys out of New York that actually layered his vocals and harmonized
Right,
and
right.
did all of that. You know, to me, it was more of a challenge to carry and try to profess the best I could with my talent, and to take it, you know, and be an individual and do my best to stand out for, you know, whatever we were at the time and place per album, you know.
So you then were strictly taking care of hooks, lyrical hooks and lyrics.
Mhm.
And then what about these the musical arrangements, the
Uh,
riffs, and putting everything together like
Mainly
that?
AJ, but Mike contributed to a couple of songs, and he'll tell you,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
And of course Mike was doing the solos, which no one was really doing in New York
and
at that time.
nobody was telling him what to do. He arranged and did all his stuff, whether he wrote this song or not. What he was doing on lead guitar was phenomenal. And, you
Well,
know, he was still a kid.
yeah, I know. I mean, he I think
You
you
know,
told
we
me
all were, but he was a few years younger
he was a
than
few
me, for
years
example.
younger.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I've been in a million bands. None of them have ever made it, but you know, all bands have internal strife and internal drama. And sometimes I wonder, like, I mean, I would like to, you know, kind of explore that with you. We don't have to do it right this second. Hopefully, we'll do a part two.
Yeah,
But
we could do it another time. You know,
yeah,
there's a lot of things I'm not happy with. And for a long time before the millennium dropped, you know, there was a lot of things I was upset and bitter about. And, you know, I would self-medicate that pain. But, you know, this business is designed in many ways for bands to fail. You know, there's only like one band out of every 1,000 that gets to even break ground and really be recognized. And, you know, I'm still very proud of what all of us did together as a team.
no,
You
you
know,
got yeah, it was amazing stuff. In fact, one of our commenters earlier, way up there, I'm not going to go find it, but he said Leeway needs to reunite. Needs to reunite, and I don't know if there's any possibility of that ever happening.
you
But
know, I don't. I enjoy playing with Mikey when he's well enough to come up and do stuff with us. But there's just so much baggage from the past that, you know, it's not fun. You know, what I'm doing now is fun.
right, yeah,
You,
exactly.
you
And
know, I get to go out there. You know, I don't have a tour manager. I don't have a tour bus. I don't have a merch person. I work the
right,
fucking merch, you know, and
right, right,
it's a free meet and greet, you know, and whether you're a kid or you're somebody that was there at the inception of the band and saw us back in the Dizzy, you know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing, and it's fun for me. I don't want to lose that. You know
right,
what I mean?
right.
I don't have much time left, be it a year, 3 years, I don't know. So I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and have the best time possible with it, you
Exactly,
know?
because especially with health issues, your mind and what goes on in your stress levels has such a huge effect on your overall health that like you can't mess with that for sure.
You've no idea. You know, maybe I look like I'm all happy and bouncy and stuff like that, but it's very much a challenge for me to even get up there and do a show nowadays. I can't bounce around like I used to, but I've got a great group of friends behind me.
Uh-huh.
they have their own band called Damn Your Eyes. Ironically, the two guitar players that are with me now both did stints in Leeway as bass players. Go figure.
Really?
You know, yeah. And you know, my vocals are still very strong, and I don't want to break what doesn't need fixing. You know what I mean?
Good way to look at it. So let's explore two excerpts from two tracks off of Desperate Measures, and you know, just to see how the band progressed. And so the first one that I chose, and you know, every song on this album is amazing, but I chose Ball Hugger because this is a song to me that kind of bridges the like, it has elements of Born to Expire and elements of your kind of your progression into the Desperate Measures sound. So everybody, behold the genius that is Ball Hugger. I can't tell you how many times I played that at 10 in my college dorm, basically giving an FU to everybody around me because I related so much to that song, man.
Takes a lot of stamina to bang those out, boy.
But this one also has, sort of towards the end of the song, another one of these great breakdowns that I want the audience to hear. So check this out, guys.
Get that kiss. Hug that hug. My husband is desperate done. Don't forget you remember everything I say. When the road didn't feel like the other day.
And of course, by this time in the crowd, everybody's just going fucking nuts. I mean, that must have been the best feeling. I mean, come on, man.
I'm telling you, man, no drug could do that for you. You know, and then I could see why a lot of artists self-medicated, whether it was just getting drunk and acquiring cirrhosis of the liver or what have you, because, you know, it was just, you know, how do I feed that energy after I come off stage, you know, and all of that, you know, after you've had a taste of that experience, you know, a lot of people get trapped up and lost in that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm guilty of that. You know, I had a rough time for a period of time in my life, you know, and a lot of people don't survive that, you know. So,
Right.
you know, by 1990, you know, after Andrew Wood of Mother Love Bone died from an overdose, record labels weren't touching bands that were not easy to corral and control.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely fell under the category as being somebody who was not easy to corral and control.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was
you
that
know,
by dint of your natural personality, or the drugs that were becoming an issue?
a lot my personality, you know, a lot of it, but also, you know, going a little too far brought that on too.
What
You
was
know?
your role? What was your role in the band? Like, like everybody has their role to play. Some people are the taskmasters, some people are the organizers, some people just kind of are there to vibe and keep everyone together. Some people
Well,
are
for a
the
lot of it,
jokesters.
in the early inception of the band, you know, being the front man and being the most polarizing personality, you know, I was the leader of the band. You know, I kind of convinced everybody and told everybody, we're going to be Leeway, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to call this album Born to Expire, we're going to call this Desperate Measures. But then I had to let go of that. And by then, the typical shit that happens to most bands out there after you're together for 3-4 years. Things start becoming frayed, personalities begin to clash, people are taking sides, you know what I mean? And I for myself, I was an individual. I was always a lone wolf, if you will. You know what I mean? It's the best way to explain it, to be honest.
Were you and AJ the same age?
Yeah, pretty much. I do a year difference. I was a little bit older than everybody else.
So I'm going to ask Mikey this next week, but was the fact that he was younger, did that cause any issues in the band?
Say again?
The fact that Mikey was younger than you by a few years, was that ever?
No, I mean, like I butt heads with everybody, you know what I mean? But I don't think it had to do with generational gap or anything like that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
It wouldn't have been a generation gap, but it would have. But you know how it was. Like a lot of times, especially in those years, like I never hung out with older people or younger people very often. It was mainly people in my grade, and I don't know if that's universal to all of New York City, of course. But
I was always rather ageless too.
Ageless.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Hung out with older people. I hung out with younger people. You know what I mean? Like I think that's why I can relate to an audience that's younger than the songs now. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a common ground. I don't look and act that much like an old man. You know what I mean? And I've always been a kid at heart. So, it's easy for me.
So the magnum opus on Desperate Measures, the Pièce de Résistance, one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest metal songs ever written, if not the greatest metal song ever written, a song that gave me a lot of solace on bad days, on gloomy days, and it helped uplift me greatly when I needed uplifting. A song called "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be," which we're going to play some excerpts of. But actually, let's play the excerpt, and then I want to talk a little bit more deeply about this song. So everybody, prepare yourself. We have 3 excerpts from the song. This song is actually close to 8 minutes long. It has many different several different sections in it, and it really epitomizes, in my opinion, it captured what that time felt like for me personally, and I'm sure that a lot of people in the audience can relate as well. So everybody, "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be," and we'll listen to the excerpts, and then we will ask Eddie some questions about it.
Kick it when the sun don't shine.
So, of course, the first thing that I noticed there, Eddie, is the prominent bass. For the first time in a Leeway album, you could actually hear the bass. What was the actually, I want to play a couple more of these excerpts because I kind of want to get into this and not have any interruptions. So, people, this is of course the next section of the Future Ain't What It Used to Be, which is another one of these brilliant what I call breakdown parts where the tempo just changes on a dime, and you're just you're just like, huh, what the hell just happened? But meanwhile, everyone's going crazy in the crowd around you. All right, I said I wasn't going to talk, but I have to ask. Cock-a-doodle-doo. I mean, it was brilliant, but where did that come from?
Well, what rhymes with
Morals are laurels too.
yeah, so it's like,
Someone said, Corky said in the audience, he said rap vibe in there. Yeah, absolutely, Corky. I mean, and we talked about in the beginning of the interview how Eddie was, some of his earliest influences were Jackson 5 and that R&B stuff.
well,
So then,
also you asked me about a line like that, you could sit and you could gripe or complain, oh, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And with a song like that, Future Ain't What It Used to Be, it's like, most of the time you can vent your frustrations about things, but, people yes you to death. They don't really listen to you a lot of the time. So you can't really talk to anybody. Sometimes you feel trapped like that. So, cock-a-doodle-doo. It's like, whatever, son.
right. I
Get
mean,
away, kid, you're bothering me. Like Rod Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, just a great line, and really epitomizes to me your brilliance, because it was just the perfect punctuation set in the perfect way with the perfect inflection and the right and the attitude, and it just uplifts you. I mean, even though it's this heavy music with these guitars, it's
Well, it was unheard of at the time too, because the first song clocks in at over 5 minutes, and then the last song finishes at like close to 7.
right. And
what kid is going to be able to go off on a dance floor for 5 straight minutes, let alone 7?
Did you ever play The Future Ain't What It Used to Be live?
Yeah, at Lemore's. There's footage on YouTube if you look for it.
Cool. It wasn't like a regular song in your set?
Not all the time, no, but a lot of Desperate Measures was performed live at a particular show at Lemore's. And like I said, it's on YouTube. You can find it.
And again, for the people in the audience who might not have ever been exposed to Leeway, this was 1991. This sounds just as fresh today as back then. And so, this was revolutionary stuff for its time, and still to this day sounds, I mean, it's a mixture of a lot of things, Eddie. It's the music, it's the delivery, but it's also the amazing recording done by Tom Soares at Normandy Sound. So the ending, of course, which we're going to hit the audience with, I think I'm just going to play it, and I want you guys out there to absorb the beauty of this. And of course, the song fades out on that riff. Now, real quick before you talk about that, I just want to say this particular passage highlights the brilliance of Pokey Mo, the drummer, because if you listen to what he's doing there, it's actually brilliant, because he doesn't play the bass drum until later on in that he just plays the hi-hat and the snare, and he's giving so much room for that huge guitar riff. And then when the bass drum finally comes in, it really has that impact. What? So, who wrote this part, and what was? I mean, did you guys?
Mike would tell you better than me. A lot of the times, like the ideas that they were bouncing around, a lot of the times it would be hashed out, and I would wait for a more relative position where the song was pretty much laid out, and then I could jump in. It wasn't much always about songwriting, sitting down together and scribbling lyrics. I would wait for the sound, and then I would try to sit and think about like what subject and what type of storyline can I go with to this sound? What fits? You know what I mean? And you know, since it was like a 7-minute song, kind of like fucking hardcore rock opera, you know what I mean? It's like talking about the story of trying to achieve, but being caught with the stranglehold of being maybe too hip, too early, and not being able to get recognized, or are you just another band that is going to fall under the pit and pile because you're just not getting recognized, you're not getting that opportunity. So
wait, so that line, just another wasted day, related to your troubles in the band?
Frustration, the whole frustration of trying to take this music to another level. You know what I mean? Like the future ain't what it used to be. Like,
right.
You know, you go into this with open eyes and you're just so happy to be there. But like most bands, after a couple of releases, the label's not really giving a shit anymore. They're just kind of waiting for the chance and opportunity to move on from you and sign somebody else and do bigger and better things with them. I always felt like a lot of the MTV bands, when they were getting their moment on the show or the channel, like, were just happy to be there. And then a couple of years later, they start thinking about the mathematics of mechanical royalties and promotion and the way a record deal in the form of capitalism is designed for you to lose and the label to gain. You know what I mean? Like it's frustrating and it taxes a lot of people.
And of course, and of course, back then that was your only outlet. We didn't have the internet. You didn't have YouTube. I mean, we're doing this now. This would have taken a professional TV studio, you know, and major money to do just 15 years ago.
Yeah, like the Kingpin video, 10 grand budget. You know what I mean? Can be done on $1,000 today.
Right, exactly.
$20,000 album from 1987 can be done for $3,000 on Pro Tools.
Right.
May not have a prolific sound, but there's a lot of engineers out there that can create that boom without needing to go to analog recording.
Right. Or even amps nowadays. You could just do it all with digital modeling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or be a trap band and, you know, everything's sampled, and musically you're a little more simplified and you're using bigger sounds through, you know, loops and samples, shit like that. You know,
yeah, I mean? And I think something has been definitely lost in that progression toward, well, regression, in my opinion.
And we might have been a bit too much about it, but at least, like, for the time, you know, there wasn't any of the bands coming out of a Sunday matinee, you know, trying to be epic and profound with their songwriting.
Right. And this song in particular is, in my opinion, the epitome of epic and profound. I can't tell you how many times I walked with that in my headphones on gray, rainy days, looking out on the Hudson River, thinking about like everything going wrong in my life.
And you know, a lot of that and the sound mix and everything else coming from a studio and an engineer like Tom Soares, you know, a lot of gifts and blessings, but then, you know, the end result just didn't let it reach where it could have reached. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to me, that's what an eternal shame of.
Yeah, I mean, because Mikey, Mikey's just as solid of a guitarist as a Dave Mustaine or somebody like that.
Without a doubt.
And
And Tony Fontau on the first album, I'm calling him a double bass pioneer. I mean, this guy was unbelievable.
And you just look at it, and it's it's good that it's there and it's going to be available for posterity, forever, because that's
Right.
what an album is.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I can't spend the rest of my time going on 58 with the woulda, coulda, shoulda. I had to let that all go. You know what I mean? Because it was very poisonous to me.
Mhm.
And I put that to bed behind me a very long time ago.
Well, that's good. So listen, Eddie, we're getting on an hour and 50 minutes. This has been an amazing interview. We didn't even get to half the stuff I wanted to talk about today. So I'm not putting you on the spot, but I want to let you know that you have an open invite to come back anytime. I'm certainly
Yeah,
going
I'll
to
be
ask
happy
you.
to come back. Yeah,
Yeah, because I wanted to get to live call-ins. I wanted to ask some more questions. I wanted to talk about the third and the fourth album.
Well, look, anybody out there that feels like reaching out to me, I got hacked on Instagram last year, but you can find me under the Eddie Leeway official brand. It's Eddie_Leeway_official. It's open. Just follow me and reach out.
We'll put a link in our description too, for sure. And do you have any last words for today's show? I know we didn't get into all the, the health
It's kind of
issues, but
impossible, but I'm struggling. I'm doing the best I can. I'm still trying to bring the show. I'll be performing at the end of May in Tompkins Square Park. Like I said, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll get to see that.
I'm going to be there.
And if you could donate to my GoFundMe, that'd be beautiful. You know what I mean? Because it's never ending. And this is realistically the battle I'm going to have for the rest of my time. Maybe I'll get to live 10 years like Norm Macdonald got to do fighting cancer. But there will come a time where this takes me. And I'm at peace with that. I honestly am. But, I still get up every day. I still try to make the best of what I can do. Chemo is on schedule every 3 weeks. I don't really feel that sick from it, other than losing my hair. I used to shave my head bald. So what's the big deal? You know what I mean? So I'm happy. And I'm at peace.
Well, that's great, and it's really inspirational to hear, and hopefully people in the audience out there.
Well, that's a big part of this too, is to show people that maybe you have been dropped with a life sentence, such as where I am with stage 4 cancer, but I'm holding, and each day I'm beating this motherfucker. Every meal, every good time, every opportunity is one that they can't take from me. And that's a beautiful thing.
Well, Eddie, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. It truly was a privilege and an honor to host you. You don't know how impactful and meaningful you personally as a musician have been in my life, and so this was a huge deal for me, and I'm super happy we were able to meet up and have this interview today. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the audience. And
my pleasure, and my love and respect to everybody out there tonight. You, the moderators, the fans. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
You're very
welcome. Thank you for the time and opportunity to be on here tonight.
Absolutely. Eddie, please just wait backstage. I'm going to take the audience on out, and I want to say goodbye to you off the air, okay?
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Well, Eddie Sutton on for the first time, and hopefully not the last. Like I said to him, we only got into half of the questions that I had for him, and also Eddie's a multifaceted guy. We could have shows about mob history. We could talk about true crime. I want to ask him about gardening, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So hopefully we'll we'll schedule another show with Eddie, because this is Leewayology. This is a classroom on the air about all things Leeway. And we're not done. We're going to squeeze every bit of juice out of this that we possibly can. So everybody, on behalf of Eddie, I want to say thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. It truly was truly was an honor for you guys to be with us. And next week we will have on the great Mikey Gibbons, guitarist extraordinaire. Really looking forward to that one. And of course, the following week, we will have Tony Fontau, the original drummer from Born to Expire, where we will talk about his double bass mastery. So until then, everybody, stay well, stay sane, and stay healthy. And we will see you at the next episode of Leewayology. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.